Hello, everyone. You're listening to the Small Business Show. My name is Swire, your host for the show. My guest today is Deirdre Tshien. She's the founder and CEO of Capsho. She's a very busy entrepreneur. Not only that, she's also a creator for Viralocity Marketing, the author for The Traffic Formula, and a host for two podcasts, The Remarkable Entrepreneur and The Remarkable Entrepreneur Playbook podcast. How you doing, Deirdre?
I'm doing well. Thanks so much for having me on.
For listeners who might not yet be familiar with your work, can you sum it up together and then how did you start your entrepreneur journey?
Yes. Gosh, wow. Okay, so what I do now is I'm actually the CEO and co-founder of Capsho. So it's a software that is AI powered and it helps experts who podcast create all of their promotional email instantly. Now, how did I get there is wow, it was a journey. It's, I guess, if I take you all the way back to almost a decade ago, because that was my first foray into entrepreneurship, we were I feel like we were I mean, sometimes I still feel like I'm really naive, but definitely naive at that point in time, because we went into one of the hardest industries I think that you could as a first time entrepreneur. We decided, so we was my then partner, now husband, and I decided to open a dessert bar. So hospitality, which is completely different, obviously, to what I'm doing now. But we had just found a passion. Like my husband loves baking, I love eating desserts, and so it was a match made in heaven. And it was one of those things where, if I look back, I don't know how we actually got the thing started, because we were on the hook for a lease. At the time, we didn't really know what that meant, but now very, it's not something that you can get out of lightly. We were in debt, hundreds of thousands of dollars from before we even opened, because we didn't realize how much it costs to fit out one of these brick and mortar stores. And we probably used a very common marketing strategy, which is build it and they will come, which I would say right now, anyone listening to this, is not a good marketing strategy to leverage. Okay, building it out, hoping that they will come, is not something I would advise anyone doing. But that was what we did because we didn't know any better, and so we built it, and they didn't come for a long time, for quite a few months. Now, fast forward, we did get out of that. We were able to grow that brand. It's called the Choc Pot in Sydney, to 5 locations. We started a burger restaurant alongside that. We had 2 of those locations. And then end of 2018, we found out that one of our store managers of our busiest store he'd been stealing from us. And we're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars, like a lot of money,
Wow.
over a few years. Yeah, so it was kind of like it kind of almost needed that moment to break us out of this hamster wheel that I feel like we'd created for ourselves. And I started rethinking everything. I was like, is this where we want to be? Is this what we want to be doing? I'm like, yeah, we can grow this thing, but is this the path that we want to be on, essentially? And at the time, I was exploring with another co-founder a fashion technology idea, and I've always wanted to work and live overseas. And so I was like, what better place than like for the intersection of fashion technology than New York City? So I was like, let's just move to New York City. My husband was on board. He's so supportive. And I spoke to my co-founder, and she was like, okay, sure, why not? So we gave ourselves 12 months to make it work, because we obviously we didn't have any like rental history, we didn't have a credit score, none of that. So we actually prepaid our rent 12 months. That was like our whole savings, basically. Moved over here and we hit the ground running. So my co-founder and I, with this fashion technology business, we hypothesized that our ideal clients or customers were going to be either college students, women, or young professionals. So we went to Columbia, NYU, Wall Street, and we just started talking to women. And what we realized was that while we were solving a problem, it wasn't really a big enough problem that people would very quickly change their habits for. So we actually decided to fail that idea. So this was like end of 2019. And then we were like, what are we going to do? Because this was the whole reason why we had come over. We had nothing left in Sydney. We'd sold everything. So we're like, okay, we have to make it work now. So as a result of that, we just kind of fell into, agency work, because while we were talking to these potential end customers for our fashion technology idea, we were also talking to the other side of the marketplace, which was boutiques and brands. And the one thing that they kept saying over and over again was like, it would be great if someone could help us with acquisition. And so when we decided to fail it, we were like, we have to go back to them, because we'd open these discussions. So what we actually went back to them with was like, hey, why don't we help you solve acquisition in this way? So we actually started an agency business, and we transitioned into coaching, because we wanted to really work more on the ground at the grassroots level for people just getting started. And through that process, as we were talking to clients, because one of my big things I always say for people on social, and we'll talk about this with content and things like that, is you've got to tell your stories, right? I think we all know that. And especially as podcasters, we know that storytelling is so powerful, and that's how you create connections with your audience. And so my clients who were e-commerce business owners and very used to hiding behind their product were like, okay, Deirdre, I get it. I get that I have to tell my story, but how do I do that? And as a result of that, and trying to solve that particular problem, we actually created our first version, MVP version of Capsho, which is software. And at that time, that MVP version was about helping entrepreneurs turn their stories into a bank of captions and emails. When we launched that, so that MVP of that, we were like, we made another great marketing strategic error, which was that we can help all entrepreneurs. We can now talk to everyone. And again, when you talk to everyone, you end up talking to no one. I think anyone in marketing would know that. And so we struggled again, like to get cut through. We were not getting people signing up. It was getting harder and harder. And we spoke to our coach at the end of the day, and swallowed my pride, and I was like, okay, I need help. And he basically was very directly was like, you've got to niche down. Like, that's going to be the answer to everything. I was like, that's a big promise, but okay, again, I'm very coachable, so let's try this thing. So we went through the hard pains of niching down. For me, that meant focusing on experts who podcast. And what that has meant is a transition of our business and our software product. So rather than helping all entrepreneurs turn their stories into a bank of captions and emails, we now help experts who podcast create their promotional content, all their promotional content. So episode title, description, show notes, social media posts, and promotional email that is powered by AI. So that's the next iteration of Capsho and this business.
Thank you so much for summarizing your stories within 5 minutes. I'm sure that you left out a lot of details, and I could tell already that you're a type of entrepreneur that you see an idea, you just have to do it. You just have to try it and then see if it fits. And then you are really great at recognizing that if something didn't work, and then you don't have pride that you have to stick it in and drive it to the ground, you're able to pivot pretty quickly. You gave us a few examples already, so now you're on your new venture, Capsho. Can you tell me more about that? Now with the niche, you're focusing on podcasts, which is what we're doing right now. So how is it different than there are different websites and different technology right now that sometimes I use. I use transcripts sometimes. Sometimes there are technology that I know that I can upload the podcast and generate some cool graphics, right? So I could promote the show. So how does it work with a Capsule? Can you let me know more about what it does for podcasters?
Yeah, so it's anchored in our strategy called Content Honey Traps. And Content Honey Traps is essentially a system that is designed to compel your audience, your genius listeners, clients, to follow you through your front-end funnel. So whether that's social media or your email list, onto your podcast, and then ultimately into a conversion event. And the reason why we want to be doing that, so I speak about him a lot, but Daniel Priestley wrote this book called Oversubscribed, and he talks about this 7-hour rule, that it takes someone on average 7 hours to spend time with you. That could just be consuming your content, to then come to know, like, and trust you enough to say yes to whatever it is that you are trying to sell them. And when I was listening to it, I was like, well, that makes so much sense, because, with my first coaching business, I used to run a lot of challenges, like 5-day challenges. And that was such a great vehicle to go to take someone from cold, like not knowing you at all, to closed. And the reason why is because by the end of that challenge, they spent a good 7 hours with you. And so I was like, yeah, this totally resonates. And so I started thinking about, how is it that I could use my because I've got multiple podcasts. How is it that I could get someone to spend time with me on that long form content? And that starts with them needing to listen to my podcast. Now, a lot of times, when we talk about repurposing content, we do it a little bit blindly. We maybe, if we put in enough time and effort, we try to find the best, juiciest part of an episode, and we clip that and we put it on our social media, and we're like, this is the best thing. The thing is with that is you've given away the best stuff. So why? So people are like, oh, great, I've got the value. I don't need to listen to your podcast episode. And that's good for them. And you're definitely doing them a service, but you're, in a sense, doing yourself a disservice, because you're not clocking up that 7 hours that you want them to be spending with you. And so as I was thinking, I was like, okay, how do I, throughout that front end funnel, so let's say social media to podcast right now, how do I hook them? How do I create curiosity in them to want to actually need to really listen to my podcast episode? And so I started thinking about the content honey traps and the mental models that actually go into creating these content honey traps. So we have 8 for our story-based and 4 our values or tips-based. Some of them are, it's like, duh, of course, things like a cliffhanger. If you want to put content out there that leaves people hanging, I mean, that's kind of like the core of what makes a good soap opera, like a great, it's what had me hooked on The Bold and Beautiful for years and years, because they were just so good at cliffhangers, right? So, if you think about techniques like that, like the cliffhanger, there's techniques like the sharer or the big reveal or the jaw dropper. Even, these are names that I created to help me with these mental models. If we're talking about even tips or value-based mental models, we have the rebel. So how do you talk about how do you promote what the topic you're talking about is not about? Because by the end, people are like, but what is it? Well, what is it about then? I need to know. I need to listen to this thing to find out what it is actually about. Or you give away like a small secret, and then you're like, but guess what? This isn't even actually the best thing that was dropped in the episode. That was not even the best thing that was shared in the episode. So I started creating these mental models around how to bring these content honey traps to life. How do you actually create so much curiosity in someone that they need to do the thing that you want them to? So the difference is that the software Capsho actually, it was created with that in mind. It was created specifically for people who want to compel someone to go listen to their podcast to actually do so. And so it's all around, you mentioned transcription tools. Obviously, it starts with a transcript, so we do that and we provide that as well. But then we actually create, we will recommend, I should say the AI recommends episode title, show notes, descriptions. It will actually write it for you. It will actually do all
that's
that.
a big help for me. I could talk for a long time, but I couldn't write
Yeah,
a simple
right?
paragraph. So yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I'm exactly the same. So we'll do all of that. And, it's a great complement to like an audiogram builder. So the audiogram builder can, create your creative, and then we will help you with the actual caption. That, again, is based on content honey traps. It's based on how do we hook a potential listener in and have them want to listen to your podcast. So that's our difference.
I think it's very interesting because, if you talk to, podcast hosts, I'm sure that you've been doing a lot. The challenge for them is a lot of us, I would say at least 80% of us don't really make money, right? Doing a podcast. We just love what we do, or we want to just dig deeper and talk to interesting people like yourself, or, just want to give back, right? We're not in to make money. Some podcasts do make money, right? There are, hosts that, celebrity that have their own podcast that makes money, but we do have to sometimes, a lot of times, put in budget to make it sound nicer, make it look nicer, and make
Yeah.
their wording, someone with professional background to write it professionally. So with the tools, actually, I would think will save us money, time, and a lot of effort.
Yes, exactly.
And then the episode can be out a lot sooner because I know that I was a guest on other hosts' podcasts. I have to wait for 7 months. I forgot about the conversation already because right
Yeah,
there's the hosts that put it out in a week or two. That's reasonable, but 7 months is kind of a big long queue.
it is. Yeah, totally. And that's the thing, right? Yeah, as you said, it saves time with high quality outputs. Like that's the best. You're getting the best of both worlds. Like, because a lot of times, like people who have a podcast don't even do show notes, for example. Like they might do a description, but then they don't actually do show notes. Like, by the way, is optimized for SEO. And you want it to do that because why not leverage one of the biggest, like the biggest the only search engine, Google, on the internet. So like that's the thing. It's how do you actually we've just brought together all of these pieces in marketing that actually creates a higher quality output without you really. I mean, we had a press of a button, really. Like that's the amazing thing. It's going to be so cool.
Okay. Wanted to dig deeper. You created, Viralocity Marketing. What is that concept? Can you let us know a little bit more about what it actually does for us in marketing?
Yeah, for sure. So, really, viralocity marketing is it's a way it's an experimental. This is how I kind of describe it. It's like this experimental, heart-centered approach to rapidly turning followers into buyers. So that's a lot of buzzwords, but really, what that distills down to, is four key things: your messaging, your content, your traffic, and what I call a lead attracting conversion event. Now, what do these things mean? I mean, message is, as we like, it's your message, right? All of us need to know who we're talking to and what it is that we're talking to them about. What is our, for me, it's viralocity marketing, it's content honey traps. It's like, it's my frameworks and strategies. That's where a lot of my message is anchored in. But it's also because it solves particular pain points, right? So hopefully most people in marketing know how to craft messages, but that's your starting point. And then it's about your content. Now, I wish that content, I have this like love-hate relationship with content. It's one of those things that I think, so you were saying, we all have our own biases. You're great at talking and you love talking, but then try to sit down and write things is like so hard. And yet we know that we have to do it, right? We know we have to do it because how else do you give yourself a chance to get visible, to create credibility, to create authority in your market? And that's never going to go away. In fact, it's only going to get worse, if I put that in quotation marks, because the internet's it's just going to grow bigger, better. Like, we're going to get into the metaverse. There's going to be more and more things that we're going to have to actually create content for. So how do we actually create content that is effective, but actually does the job that we want, right? So that comes back to things like content honey traps. It comes back to storytelling. I call it content trust accelerators. Like that's the content pieces that accelerate trust with your audience. When you can share and tell your stories vulnerably and be real and authentic, so there's those two sides of creating content. And then there's traffic, because it's great to create content, but unless you actually get people seeing it, it's not doing anything for you. Just like it's great to create a message, but unless you create the content for people to actually read, like it's not going to do anything for you, right? So everything stacks on the other. So traffic, I have what I call the traffic pyramid, and it's basically the 4 key ways that you can actually go and get traffic to see your content, and then be compelled to keep following you all through your long form content and onto your email list, etc. And then it results in a lead attracting conversion event. Now, why I call it a lead attracting conversion event is because, and this is more so for, I mean, it can work for any entrepreneur, but especially for online marketers. A lot of the strategies and the vehicles and the techniques that we get taught are, things like webinars and challenges, and, they are designed to, one, to attract a lead, as in, you could go to a cold person and be like, yeah, come check out this cool things what I'm going to teach, and they're like, yes, please. So you get leads that way, but it also doubles up as a conversion event, because you give them a lot of value and then you make a pitch at the end of it. So those are the 4 fundamental pillars to virality marketing, a rapid system. Now, the thing too with this is, there's a lot in there, and there is. It's not like you can implement this in 30 days. Like, that is not possible. But what you can do is you can do it with a view to what does almost to systemize and delegate it. I'm a big fan of that. I've done it in my own business. I continue doing it with my own business because, again, as entrepreneurs, like, we have to protect our time and energy. And this is the thing, like, I don't think none of us can ever do any of this stuff alone. So how do we very quickly systemize and delegate it with cost-effective resources so that a lot of that is actually off our plate and we can actually focus on what matters, like making sales and creating partnerships and, collaborations and things like that. That's really what, as the entrepreneur, as the CEO, what you should be focusing on. So I've distilled all of that in my new book as well. That's upcoming. It's launching in July. But yeah, those are basically the fundamental pillars to virality marketing.
Yeah, that's very interesting. And, with a lot of us in marketing talk about the different touch points, right? I normally say at least 7 touch points. So with all the available tools that we have, podcasts, I would say is a touch point. All the social media posts will be another one. And then if you create some other audiograms will be other ones. So with tools that are available, with one content, you can actually break it out to enough already to put you out there. So maybe someone will come across, our episode on LinkedIn, right? Which is, we're going live right now. They saw it, they didn't really listen to it, and then they see it on YouTube again. Or maybe they see, you and I push out on our email list letter,
Yes.
maybe a week later. So now they're started to realize that this episode, I'm seeing it everywhere. Maybe I should really, tune into it and listen to it. That could be your marketing message, right? So my kids are laughing at me because, our marketing team and has been telling me that, Swire, you got to get in front of camera more to talk about. I said, what do I talk about? Like, I don't want to be a pussy salesman selling pants and gadgets. They ask, just figure out what the top 10 question that people ask you every single day. And then you answer it in a short form video on YouTube. And that's how I've been doing. It's just as simple as, how long does it take to get my product? It's as simple as that.
Yes.
Do you ship when you finish my product? Yes, we do.
Yes.
So something like that. And, the team actually tweak out on the description, do the magic on it. So something as simple that will be, if listener listening right now, that you are an entrepreneur, you are the expert in your industry, something that by heart, other people are dying to find out that information.
Yeah.
If you are kind enough, maybe share, 30 seconds of what it is. And, like you said, the cliffhanger, if you want to know more, give us a call.
Exactly. I love that.
So can we, what else have you seen so far that works for you on generating more traffic and engagement? Because I felt like that, especially on social media, a lot of contents are out there, but sometimes the engagement is not. use me again as an example. I put content out on LinkedIn. Sometimes, I have people that will always like and support what I do.
Mhm.
But then recently I went to Philadelphia. I ran up the rocky stairs, right? And I took a video of it. That I think is my most viewed and commented post on LinkedIn for this year. I think like over 400 people just, watch it.
Yeah.
So that's not tied to business, but I know that will create engagement. So
Yes.
going back to a business sense, how do we create engagement, create traffic while staying on point in our business?
Yeah, I know. It's one of those, it's like, oh, why is it non-business related? Wouldn't the world be perfect if like everyone just loved all of our promotional stuff? Unfortunately, that's just not
I
how.
should run up there and just pull out a banner. Maybe that will be it.
Yeah, you totally should have just had Mad there. Yeah. But yeah, this is the thing, right? Because again, we're human. And if we, if like even yourself, Spire, like do you engage yourself personally more with things that create a everyday connection with you, or do you engage with promotional material?
Well, I try to be fun. I'm the type of person that I will look under a rug to see what's underneath that. And then I know that for my audience, they like to see me in the picture sometime
Mm,
because our industry is really product heavy. But then sometimes I have to, be in the camera. So I
yes.
accept that. So I try to, rotate that, to create more engagement. And people do, I notice that people do respond if they see me in the picture.
Yeah, right. Isn't that funny? And this comes down to like, again, I think we all know that we love buying things. Like it's a very human trait to want to buy things and spend money, but we actually hate being sold to. And I think, again, as business owners and as marketers, sometimes we forget that because we're like, yes, of course, people are going to want this thing and of course, people are going to love it. But that's not how they actually engage and connect and respond. So that's why, I do talk about two types of content. Two content types, I guess. I've already kind of very quickly spoken about content honey traps. Now, that's a great promo way, short form, to get them to your long form. Like that's, so for me, I never look at my short form content as an immediate buy, or like that's just not, like, almost impossible. There are, like, if you sell a product, then that, it's very doable. But for experts, it's very hard. Like it's very hard to sell anything off short form. So short form content honey traps is purely designed to get people to your long form content and ultimately onto your email list where you can nurture them, or into a conversion event where you can nurture them. So that's one part, one type of content. The other content is what I call content trust accelerators. And the reason why is because that type of content is all about how do you create that engagement, because when you can create that engagement and that connection, then that is how they come to know, like, and trust you. And without that know, like, and trust, like, you're never going to have them move and do the thing that you want them to do. So you do have to put some time in, unfortunately, even though I wish that we didn't have to create that that content that actually creates a connection. Now, that is really a content trust accelerator. The core of it is storytelling. And that's why your video of you running up, like, because you were telling a story, right? Like you weren't trying to promote something. You weren't like, you were literally just like, hey, this is me. This is what I'm doing. This is my story. It doesn't have to be like this long transformational journey or anything, but you were telling a story in what you were actually doing, in showing that. And people love stories. Like that is how humans connect with each other. Because I bet that when you posted that, I don't know what the caption or the message was, but let's say it was something motivational.
It's nothing like that. I just say I've been wanting to do this since I watched the Rocky the first time, like 30 some odd years ago.
Amazing.
Now I've done it.
Yes, exactly. And so even by you saying that, like, I would view that or see that. And subconsciously, this happens subconsciously, by the way, but I immediately think of the first time that I got to live out a dream that I've always wanted to, no matter how big or small. Like for me, it could be the first time I came over to New York City and was able to eat at Cat's Deli because I had watched, when Harry Met, like, it could be anything like that, where when I see that, I immediately connect it to a moment in my own life. And that's why telling stories is so powerful, because that's how, as humans, we take in information. I'm reading and I'm watching you do it, but really what I'm subconsciously thinking about is those moments that happened for me, was able to happen for me. And so that's why it's so powerful. So that's what, we talk about, these two types of content. Like, we really do need to, and I would highly encourage everyone listening to this to actually create both types of content. Don't just promote. You need to be telling your stories. You need to be bringing you to life.
Yeah, and then for me, when I take videos like that, I won't try to pretend something that I'm not. This is I've been really wanted to run those tests for 30 somewhat year. I
Yeah.
won't pretend that I don't know, go to a fancy store to shop and then dress fancy and pose
Yes.
like outside. That's not me. And you never see me pose like that. So
Yes.
I think, especially like you said, the storytelling, I do want, because on LinkedIn, my prospect and my clients are on there. They kind of see it in, with technology analytical that you can tell. I know some of them are watching it. I could see it, right?
Yes.
So then that tell them that there is a real human being behind those voices. Maybe we never met in person. This is kind of how they are judging me and see, do we really trust this person?
Yes.
He's been telling us he can do all this and that. Oh, but then in his free time he actually does that. Do we really want to connect with that person?
Yeah.
There might be yes, and sometimes there might be no,
Yeah.
right? And I am at the point in my life that I'm okay with that.
Yes.
Sometimes we couldn't get over it. I want everyone to love what we do. Maybe not, but I would rather like, the example that you point out. You want to go niche. In my niche, am I the actual expert that people would seek out to? If I'm able to do that, or at least some of my clients say, he is the expert in what he does, then I think my job on, at least on social medias, is done. So trying different things out there. And, I love our conversation that, similar journey, but obviously different path. But then, creating the story and then the touch point, it is very important.
Definitely.
So, Deirdre, I know that we could talk about this for hours and hours, but
Yes.
for listener who wanted to get in touch with you, what would be the best way? And then for me, I want to ask you, Capsho, like, when do you guys launch the beta? I do wanted to try it.
Yeah, amazing. Would love to have you in the program. Okay, so if you want to find out more about me, deirdretshien.com. That's DeirdreTshien.com. And I'm also available on pretty much all the social media platforms. So with my full name, again, you'll be able to find me. And yes, Capsho, we are launching our beta in July. No, sorry, June. Sorry, got my dates wrong. So in June, June 1st is when we're targeting. It's a 4-week free program. 4-week free beta program. So we would love to get you involved, and any of your other listeners who are experts who podcast as well. So you can access that at beta.capsho.com, CAPSHO.com.
Okay. I'll definitely put that on the show notes so everyone can check it out, especially for a fellow podcaster. This seems like a very useful tool and save us a lot of time.
Yes, yes.
Thank you so much for coming on today, Deirdre. It's nice to have you on the show.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.